trying to do at the conference is really focus on this point about moving this from the title of the whole conference, which is repoliticizing action research, to move, from the action research to activism. And what I've been trying to do in presentations with Jackie, with Marie, in Margaret as well, is to really see how we might extend the community of action researchers who are also generating their living theories, which have all got activism at their heart. In other words, what we're really working on in a global context is to try to shift the nature of legitimation about what counts as educational knowledge. That what we've been struggling to do around the world is to say to the universities in particular that the explanations that you and I can give for our own educational influences as we try to live our values as fully as possible are worthy of accreditation at the highest level. So we're trying to shift the epistemological, if you like, the knowledge base of educational theory. Okay, so that's where the activism comes in. We're all doing it, but we're actually using a living theory approach in relation to action research to extend that influence. Now, what I'd like you to just recognise, and you've all got one of these little pamphlets here, if you just turn it over to the URLs, because what I like to do is to put any presentation that I'm doing on the Action Research Network. You can get into the Living Theory group through Facebook, but the top one on this one here actually gets you into, and this one, Margaret, I put them all up here in terms of the various presentations that we've all been giving. But Margaret's was the first one about, this was built on the work by Alfred Adler about community feeling and social interest, self-encouragement. Now this is mine today, and if you go into this and just click on it, you can actually get into the whole of the paper that I produced to back up this presentation, because in 15 minutes we can't really get to the heart of the ideas, but what we can do is just stimulate that interest so that if you wish, you can get back into those, you can have a lot more carefully, and then you can contact and communicate with us using some of these URLs here. Is that okay? So have I just got that sense about what this is about, that it's actually focused on this idea of each of us generating our own living educational theory, which is an explanation of our educational influences in our own learning, in the learning of others, and most importantly for this conference, in terms of the social formations that influence our practice and understandings. Because if we're going to work with, for example, living global citizenship, which we brought into our last presentation a couple of hours ago, where we had people in the UK, Mark Potts in particular, whose doctorate, a living theory doctorate, was focused on living global citizenship. If you decide that that is a value that you hold, you'll hold yourself accountable in terms of the life you're living and your own form of activism to show how you're actually contributing to living global citizenship within whatever context you are in. Okay, so what I'm trying to do here is, if you just look at this abstract, the research aims to focus on the communication of meanings of relationally dynamic values. What I'll do very quickly is go through the key points in the paper, but I'd like very much to get your responses to what I think are really important ideas, like what is a relationally dynamic value? Jackie DeLong has been focusing on the nature of educational conversations, in what Jackie always talks about her dialogical way of being. Now, the action aims are focused on establishing a global educational conversation with a focus on improving practice with these values. The methodology, the theoretical tools and methods, are focused on the generation of living theories. And the importance of your own living theory is the recognition that there is no existing methodology that you can just apply to come up with a valid explanation of your influence. That each living theory researcher, in the course of generating their explanation in their life, generate their own living theory methodology. And this is a really important point, because most, for example, doctoral students are asked to pre-specify the methodologies that are going to apply before they even undertake the research. In generating a living theory, you acknowledge that in the course of generating a valid explanation of your influence, that you are also generating your own living theory methodology. Now, all I really want to mention now, before I open it up, is the importance of relationally dynamic values. Now, Dorothea Bacon, in her book on relational epistemologies, from a feminist perspective, actually focused on the importance of a relational epistemology. And most of us, through our university system in the UK, are not used to even thinking about placing ourselves in relation to others and generating a relational epistemology. We're used to actually feeling that this is a matter of clarifying the values that we use as explanatory principles, and that's the end of it. Like academic freedom, which is what I do in my doctorate. So can I just pause there, just in relation to this idea of relationally dynamic values, that finding just your way into this so that you get a response and we feel that we're engaged in a conversation, because it will be a contradiction in terms now for me to talk at you for the rest of the time. If we can't get some conversation going that actually highlights the importance of the relationally dynamic with responses from each other in terms of what I've given you here. So all the preparation is on the web, you can access it, but what is vital to me is that you have a response which we can actually work with. So do you have anything? If you look at that and you say, okay, is there anything there that interests you? Or if you say to me, well, why did you come to this session? You know, it may have nothing to do with this presentation, but it'd be interesting for me to get a sense of any reasons that you had for coming to this session, anything that you want from it.
Jack, when I think about relationally dynamic values, I think about how I learn from helping others create their living theories. I learn my values in relation to them. They're created, or I come to understand them through the relationship and the educational conversations. So the recent example I have is that Michelle taught me that the way I create living cultures of inquiry is by leaving my ego at the door. So I had not made that connection before she said it to me. So, I mean, sometimes you know intuitively that that's somehow how you do it, but you don't have the language.
And what we did in the last session, Jackie was there, Michelle was in the audience, and we videotaped the interaction in the session itself. I was then able to project it and use the cursor backwards and forwards to actually demonstrate the meaning, the embodied expression of meaning of that relational dynamic that Jackie had established with Michelle. And it's a very different epistemology than the one we're normally used to within our Northern University context. Okay, so the importance of those relationally dynamic values is something which is at the heart of what we're saying in terms of going from the repoliticizing of the action research, which had its, the genesis of participatory action research in Columbia with, say, Orlando for Sport. I know Rogers Tandy was also involved in those, but with the meeting of a participatory group, it was actually politicized because it started with the presence that actually Orlando went to work with for 25 years, coming out of the university, and it was in the rural communities with a problem of the corruption of the power industry that were actually cheating the people, that they worked together to participate in a very political act to overcome that corruption. Now, that sense of politicization is one that I do believe that we can actually get together and look now, and in particular at our universities, how do we change the epistemologies that are at work, which to Susan Santos just says, look, this is really a form of epistemicide. It's a killing off of the knowledges of the South by our Western or Northern universities. But is there anything else you're feeling from there that you would like me to take out? Because, as I say, that relationally dynamic is really crucial. But is there anything else there that you're feeling interested in or you want to ask a question about? I don't all speak at once. You know, I've no intention of continuing. If there's silence, we genuinely can move on, because, as I said, what matters for this globalisation, the living global citizen, is this participation. So if you don't contribute, you're not participating, I'm done, right? But I've done my bit. It's all on the web. You can contact me. All of the details are on here. But if you do have something you want to come forward with, then this is how I think we get this global conversation moving.
I was it's on the tip of my tongue to reflect on the relationally dynamic values, because I think that's an absolutely crucial element of inquiry and of the dialogic, because of the way that through that kind of exploration, people can not just move in their thinking, move in their feeling, move in the way that they're going to behave or action they might be going to take. To me, it's the absolute crux of this form of research. And giving it that title, the relationally dynamic value, sets absolutely within, for me, within the humanity. You know, the idea that we look at what we discover, aiming for the flourishing of humanity, is kind of embodied in that whole idea that it's our values that we live and can be visible within a relational dynamic.
And yeah, I don't know if you feel this, but as Margaret is speaking, Margaret's doctoral inquiry is bringing in community feeling and social interest from the work of Alfred Adler. Now, even as Margaret is speaking very clearly, the meanings, the embodied expression of that relational dynamic value of community feeling is very difficult unless you actually have, for example, what Maria is doing at the moment, which is videotaping me. But actually, this will not bring in, because we haven't got your approval, to bring in this sense of community feeling, which I will have, because you're evoking in me the kind of energy I feel for the work I do. Just your presence here today is evoking that sense of the community feeling. But it's that energy and the value space and the relational dynamic that Margaret is talking about that I'm saying, look, I think we found a way of putting these now into doctorates. I've got 40 odd of them on the web, all the way around the world, that have been legitimated in different universities to try to confront that epistemology's, the episteme side that Susan Sanders talks about.
And something, Jack, that's cropped up ever since I got here yesterday is the communication, is the connecting, which for me is absolutely, again, I keep talking about the crux, but to me it is the centre, because none of this is meaningful unless we put it into the social context where people move forward and they challenge. So we're saying about activism, so they move forward and they challenge what happens around them, where their needs and their rights and their beliefs and their knowledge has no ground of mutual respect with the other. And for me that, so to speak, I can speak here a bit as an Adlerian, because what Adler said, without social interest, which requires the social context, then we are nothing. But in social interest, where we work together and we engage that sense of community, that sense of resonance, that sense of connection, and the sense of the embodiment of who we are, then that is where we actually can live and express what we believe in within our social construct, which is essential.
It is, it's so vital, I think. We've just got 1 minute left, and what I'm hoping is that if you're stimulated at all, it's to actually feel that you'd like to come into this kind of global conversation. And on the right of this, in terms of the information, the communications network that we've already got. Okay? If you want evidence that these approaches have been legitimated, you can go in there and you can actually access 40-odd doctoral theses all the way around the world. The top 3 there. Liz Campbell is here. She's just got hers from Nipissing. Just look at that. Love has influenced me as a teacher. We've got the thing on cosmopolitanism from the University of Humanistic Studies, Utrecht. We've got Nelson Mandela University. And literally, I have nothing to do with the examining these. You know, this is actually ideas that have been taken, legitimated in other places. And there are over 40 of them in that section. But if you can just go and access the communication network here on the What's New section, you can get into our Living Theory, homepage of Living Theories, the current issue of eJOTS, Living Theory posters, Living Theory wiki. Okay, so you've got these forums that I just don't know you. You know, I don't know, but I can now begin to get a sense of who you are, and it would be lovely just to hear that inquiry of yours so we can connect it. Okay? Okay. Thanks.